Welcome back to Scoliosis Dialogues and SRS Podcast. Thank you for joining us for another special edition of our podcast. I'm Ashtin Neuschaefer, SRS Executive Director, and today I'll be joined by the newly elected Directors at Large on the SRS Board of Directors to give you a brief introduction to those chosen to serve as the representation of the membership. Today we have with us Evalina Berger, Khaled Kebaish, and Mike Kelly. Thank you all for joining us. Joining us is Dr. Berger, who is coming onto the board as a director at large this year. Dr. Berger, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dr. Berger, tell us a little bit about your path in SRS and what led you to becoming a board member.
So I've had the absolute privilege of working under the late Professor George Domacy, who is well known for all of the work he did in determining the blood flow of the spinal cord. And that's also what piqued my interest in scoliosis. During his lifetime in the late 60s, he had the dubious honor, if you want to call it that, very unpleasant circumstances where he did a scoliosis surgery and the patient was paralyzed. And he was so moved by this that he then started a research endeavor where he dissected more than 10,000 stillborn fetuses over a period of 10 years and published his thesis on the blood supply of the spinal cord. That is still a monumental work. Everything we know about paralysis during scoliosis and kyphosis is based on that. He showed where the common artery of Adamkiewicz started, and there are many variations to it. Just having the honor of working with somebody that was that compassionate about scoliosis and spinal deformity really turned my head as a very young attending resident towards spine. And so as soon as I graduated, still in South Africa, I said to him, you've got to join the SRS. He had all these pictures of him and John Hall and everybody in the office. There was always like these big icons because you just read these articles and I go like, wow, we actually shook their hand. And so he introduced me as a candidate member. And in 1998, I remember vividly flying to San Diego with boxes and boxes of all of my records to present to become a full member. It was in paper those days. There weren't any electronic things. So I had to take all of my patient records and pack it in several FedEx boxes and take it with me on the airplane to get to the board to present my cases. And ever since that, I've never missed a meeting. The meeting in Miami, my back made it. I didn't because it was just after Hurricane Katrina and there was another hurricane and my back came back 6 days later, but I never made that. But otherwise, this has been the one meeting that gets on my calendar every year. And I just love being part of people that have like-minded interest and that are so passionate about scoliosis and what we do for our patients.
And you've done quite a lot for SRS in the way of committee service. Tell us a little bit about the committees that you've served on and the work that you've been able to do there.
So I started very small, but I have served on the education committee. I've served on the adult scoliosis committee. I served a double stint on the bylaws and policies committee, which really taught me a lot about the working of the association. I was asked to be the chair for that committee for almost 4 years, and we really reworked the bylaws and the policies to make sure that we are an agile organization. And I learned a lot from Bobby at the time, who taught us all the difference between bylaws and policies. So it was interesting for me. I've contributed to a number of our publications in terms of groups, webinars, and also the online publications that we put out for patient education.
That's wonderful. So what made you want to join the SRS board and serve the SRS in this way?
When I got the phone call, the first thing I did was I thought, oh my God, I'm in trouble because I'm being phoned by the SRS president. I hope I didn't say anything wrong. And then I was like in the middle of my clinic and asked, and I go like, wow, is this really happening to me? I couldn't believe it. I'm always nervous when I get on the podium. I remember when I got the White Cloud Award and when I had one of the 10 papers for the best papers, I go like, oh my God, I'm such a small person and all these big people in the audience. So it was the same kind of gut reaction, like, oh, what did I do wrong? And then I immediately said, yes, I do it. And then afterwards I thought, do I have the time? Can I do it? But I'm absolutely delighted and humbled. This is a fantastic organization. It has such a great foundation. And to find opportunities in such an organization to improve it is not easy. And I hope that this position will allow me to do a couple of things. I hope that I can help to connect this organization with other like-minded organizations. We talked about connecting with Orthopedic Research Society, where I'm also a member. I hope that I can promote the organization so that we can get more philanthropy. And I'm also proud to be on the board as a female, because 80% of our patients that we treat are female. And it's interesting that it's always been a male-dominated society since 1966, while the patients are all female. And so improving diversity in that manner and advocating for other young female surgeons and other surgeons to become part of this organization that has a great scientific foundation.
That's wonderful. If you could give those young surgeons a piece of advice about their time in SRS, what would that piece of advice be?
Learn from other people. You don't have to make the same mistakes we made. For me in my career, it took me 30 years to where I am now. There are a lot of things that I could have done better. And if you come into this organization, learn from the people before you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to make the same mistakes. Take the combination of the things that they have done in their career and use that as your starting point, and then take it from there. And if we as teachers and mentors don't achieve that to make the people that we train better than we are, then we have failed miserably, because then we won't progress. So I would say, learn from people. Don't be shy to ask questions. Be humble. Talk about your complications, because you'll find out that you're not the only one in the room. And you don't always need to have all the answers. And it's okay to ask a question. There's no such thing as a stupid question.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Berger, thank you so much for spending some time with us today so that the membership can get to know you and your fellow new directors at large. Thank you again for serving, and we look forward to seeing what you do over the next few years on the board.
It's my honor and privilege, and I hope I don't disappoint. Thank you so much for having me.
Next up, we're joined by Dr. Kelly. Dr. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Why don't you start off by telling me a little bit about why you wanted to serve on the SRS Board of Directors?
Well, the SRS has been a very important part of my professional and academic development so far. I did my fellowship at Washington University with Keith Bridwell and Larry Lanke, and then sort of it was expected that you would submit your research and be on the podium. If you didn't, that was not a good job, not a job well done. So participating in that manner was expected. And then you go to the meeting and you meet people and you want to participate in a bit more. The first I did was the research and grants, which I had a great time with. And you see a couple more committees. And then after that, it's also as your career goes on, I think particularly this is important for some of the younger people, especially the assistant professors that I have talked to that say, I don't really see administration as something I'm interested in. When I've talked to my mentors, it's just a natural progression for a lot of us, that you want a new challenge and you want to, I wouldn't say exert your influence, but you want to be able to have a part in the decision-making processes. And as the under 45 director at large, it's not as much have an influence, but sort of see the inner workings and see how the society works and see how things change. And also understand why some things that maybe we say, we don't need this. And then when you speak to people who know more than you do, they explain why you do in fact need that and why some traditions are tradition and will not change. So I think it's a very natural evolution for anyone who is invested in the society in any way early on, that it's a natural progression. It's not something I sort of had on my radar. It's just sort of, it happens, and it'll happen to a lot of my peers too.
That's great. That's great. What are you most looking forward to during your time on the board?
I think a lot of it, honestly, again, as the under 45 director, is the mentorship and that I'm going to get from the other board members, both directly and indirectly, seeing how they sort of carry themselves and seeing how they make decisions and seeing how they lead this massive organization. I think that the learning opportunities there are endless. And I think most, again, of the younger members of the SRS would say we get excellent education and surgical skills. Your academic skills are sort of what you make of them. And sometimes you have a good education for it. And other times you really got to scratch and claw. And leadership is really one of those things that's really lacking in medical education. There are very few CEOs that make it to a high level and haven't read a lot of those books and sort of had very direct interactions with people to learn leadership skills and management skills. And I think that's really what I want to learn, both by direct conversation and a little bit of imbibition.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. And we're really looking forward to having you serve on the board for the next 2 years.
Thank you. I can't wait.
We also have Dr. Kebaish with us. Dr. Kebaish, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Ashtin. Glad to be here.
Start off by telling me a little bit about why you wanted to serve on the SRS Board of Directors.
Well, the SRS has clearly had a huge impact on my career. It also has a huge impact on how I am taking care of patients with spinal deformities. Been a member of the SRS now close to 20 years. And it's a great organization. It's really focuses on a lot of the things I'm interested and I believe in, improving patients' care, specifically patients with spinal deformity, not just in the US, but globally. So I'm hoping to continue on what has been done by my predecessors, other leadership of the SRS over the past years, and going forward, hopefully for many years to come.
Great. Tell us a little bit about your path that led you here. What are some of the committees you've been involved in, some of the courses that you might have been at that have led you to becoming a director at large?
So I've joined many of the committees, including the Adult Deformity Committee, IMAS Committee, Development Committee, as well as the Nomination Committee, among others. Some of these committees I've led, and clearly being on the board kind of is gets me more involved. It gets me involved at the leadership and decision-making level, and allows me to be really allowing me to shape the future of the SRS with other leaders of the group or of our society.
Great, wonderful. What are you most looking forward to as you serve on the board?
I look forward to work with my colleagues on the board, as well as other leaders of the SRS, the president, the former presidents, and the vice president or president-elect, to figure out how we can continue to move the SRS forward. The last year or two have been very challenging in many ways with the pandemic, with our inability to connect on a personal level. So trying to figure out how can we overcome these challenges. And I'm sure there are going to be similar challenges in the future. So we need to be prepared so there's no interruption and our organization continue to serve our patients, our members, and be better and better in the coming years.
So I'm going to throw one curveball at you. What is one piece of advice for somebody who's looking to get more involved in SRS?
It's not a curveball, I wouldn't say that. But I think, again, being involved in different levels from the beginning and joining early. So we know many young spine surgeons are probably intimidated. They don't think they're ever going to be involved at the leadership level, and they may take their time to join the SRS. They think being an active member is hard and it takes a lot of work, and in addition to collecting data, etc. But really getting involved early and being part and believing in the society, believing this is, for me, it's home, it's the family, it's, I think, I almost know everybody, not just at the leadership level, but most of the members. So it's my big family. So I think starting early, committed, or being committed to the society, being committed to the mission of the society, from early on and continuing to do so. And it will pay off. And I know that my predecessors, as well as others at the leadership level, have done a great job and have been involved for years. And even after they become SRS presidents and they leave, they continue to be involved. They don't really leave. I would say they just move from one role to another. So that's what I believe would be the best, or at least my advice to younger spine surgeons or involved in deformity surgery or deformity treatment of deformity patients.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really look forward to having you serve and be a representative of the membership.
Thank you, Ashtin.
DePuy Synthes Spine, being a proud double diamond sponsor of the Scoliosis Research Society, would like to invite you to visit our professional education website at www.jnjinstitute.com and view the comprehensive surgical videos related to cervical and thoracolumbar deformity. For additional information, please contact your local sales representative.
Thank you all for joining us.
The Scoliosis Research Society is a nonprofit professional organization made up of physicians and allied health personnel. Their primary focus is on providing continuing medical education for healthcare professionals and on funding and supporting research in spinal deformities. Please visit srs.org for further information.